Why don't we get started then? Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Microgrid State Working Group. As we get started, we would just like to thank, on behalf of both NARUC and NASEO, thank the U.S. Department of Energy, Office of Electricity for supporting this working group over the last two plus years. So recently, in November and December, we invited some new members into our state working group. So we just want to welcome our new members and thank our existing members for their support of our working group. So this is our new map reflecting the current membership of the state working group. So we've got a really diverse membership base. So we thank everyone for your interest. And as we get started, since we do have some new members in the group, I just wanted to point to the resources that we have available online. We have recordings of all of our past webinars and meetings of the state working group. We have a couple of publications that we put out through the state working group back in January of 2021. And we also include other technical resources, reports from the Department of Energy, reports that are put out by states that are relevant to the objectives of the state working group. So we have pages both on the NARUC and NASEO websites that host these resources. And so now we'd like to move into the first thing on our agenda, which will be a summary on microgrid and resilience related provisions in the bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was signed into law by the president last month. And we have with us Cameron Brooks, Executive Director of Think Microgrid, to give us a summary for about 15-20 minutes, and then Cameron will take questions. So please put your questions either into chat or raise your hand and we can unmute you following his update. So I'll pass it over to Cameron now.
Kira, if you can maybe share the controls, I'll throw some slides up.
Sure, I will stop my share and you can bring up your slides.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me here and to be able to share some of this. So hopefully you're seeing some slides that that throw the date there and have the Think Microgrid logo. So it's great to be part of this. You know, very quickly, I just wanted to offer a quick introduction. Think Microgrid is a new coalition that formed earlier this year. You can see some of the founding members there, equipment manufacturers, project developers, software and controls, who all share an interest in seeing microgrids better understood and the policy environment sort of proactively addressed. So we have, as we call out, some priority areas around education, just to make sure people really understand what the state of the market, what the state of the technology is, and then working with leaders who really want to address how microgrids can be a solution or part of the solution for different policy objectives, and then, you know, trying to work with those leaders. So obviously this being here today talking to you all, I think fits nicely within all of that, and so it's an honor to be able to come here. I'll say also, just by way of kind of background, we recently issued what we think of as a vision paper that highlights what the opportunity of microgrids really is, and I think, you know, that will lead into why we're so interested in some of the things that are in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And so we released this actually at the NARUC meeting in Louisville. And it kind of goes over some examples of where microgrids are in the field today and what kind of applications they're really addressing. And also outlining, you can see here some policy topics that, you know, seem to be either coming up or require some attention, or where there might be some opportunities or barriers to look at, you know, some kind of reform. That's available on our website, thinkmicrogrid.org. We're going to be hopefully coming back in February for what we are looking at is sort of a quick assessment of states along these criteria. And so looking at deployment of microgrids, how they're being applied for resiliency in particular, and what the policy environment looks like. Please don't read too much into this. This is not going to be a comprehensive scorecard and, you know, ranking everybody or things like that. It's really more to just get an understanding of broadly where different states are and hopefully providing some kind of support and guidance around what a roadmap of actions might look like. We're also going to be hosting a policy summit later in June, and so there might just be some more details. So enough about Think Microgrid, but I did want to give sort of that quick introduction. And obviously there's a lot of attention going into microgrids right now. I sort of call out one quote here from the secretary, who obviously is going to be now in charge of quite a bit of new money. So not all of the money. I've just pulled here from the Washington Post and I think the New York Times, some sort of different breakouts of how people are looking at what's in the Jobs Act or in the infrastructure bill and how to sort of group it. Most of the things, sorry? Oh, I thought maybe there was a question. If there are questions, please chime in. But well, I guess Kira, you said to put them in chat. But most of the things that I think we're all going to be interested in looking at more are things around resilience and probably things around climate and where there's efforts around grid modernization. So as we have gone through the bill, and I'll share quickly that we do have a briefing document, sort of throw it up here on the screen. It kind of goes by section and highlighting what we think is relevant. It is literally in the final stages of editing, so I'd be happy to share it with this group, after this call. And so Kira, maybe I can, entrust you to help circulate that around. But what we see is at least $41 billion of funding that's explicitly called out in some of the new funding and expanded funding that exists for existing programs, things like the Smart Grid Investment Grant. So about $41 billion where microgrids can be relevant, if not core to the solution. And obviously that goes across quite a few different agencies. A lot of that money is going to the Department of Energy, and a lot of the money is going in various form through the Department of Transportation with a focus on transportation. But you can see that really the largest chunk there is around grid infrastructure and resilience. So in order to talk maybe a little bit more about some of the examples of where there is where there would be funding available, or where states may have an interest in sort of understanding how the funds that are in the infrastructure bill could be applicable. I wanted to just pause for a minute and go back to, we actually did a workshop, and so some of you on the call may have been there at the NARUC annual meeting. But I wanted to just sort of introduce this quick metric or matrix for a second. So along the vertical axis, we're sort of talking about the different kinds of microgrids, whether it's a single customer, a campus-like setting where it's still fundamentally behind 1 meter, or whether you're sort of involving multiple customers. And then on the left-hand side, I'm sort of roughly sketching out what we might consider prime power applications for a microgrid. And you'll see in the upper left corner the idea of, these being microgrids that are operating under mostly blue sky conditions and probably with some interest around rates and demand management. And then really over on the right side, more about resiliency microgrids. You might say black sky. We put red sky in there mostly because at the meeting that was the color pen that I had, but also red sky can be for critical conditions, and you'll see in there in the middle the idea of the purple sky. Now why I'm putting this up and explaining some of this, and you'll see a couple of examples that I just wanted to walk through in a second. So the reason that this feels important to walk through is as we start to chart out, going back to some of those policy issues that we outline in the paper, you'll see there's sort of a big box with interconnection and distribution costs that really is applicable to all microgrids. But when you cut down to other policy issues like rights of way or utility franchise implications, it really only affects the multi-customer microgrids. And similarly, when you're dealing with things like whether there's departing load or are assets, especially if they're using ratepayer funds being used and useful, that tends to be applicable mostly in these, what I'll call these prime power applications. And the reason I say that, especially around the departing load, is for things like resiliency microgrids that are really just meant to be operative a few or in the most critical moments. The actual load impact is a little bit less. And the reason that this, again, sort of feels important to call out is part of what we see as an opportunity going forward. I've put up here a very simplified version of what a quote-unquote value stack might look like for a microgrid. And this is one of the challenges that microgrids face and opportunities really, is that they stack together a lot of different values. So on the lower part, I've got the distribution costs for running the network, the reliability standards that that all utilities are providing, and then the commodity electricity. And we've got this new value, this thing of resilience that really hasn't been there before. And I've just put a few sections around things like preventing outages. There's a lot of wildfire effort in the bill, grid flexibility. It becomes very, very important for regulators, especially the economic regulators, to understand what the value of resilience is so that they can understand, you all can understand the impact on ratepayers. When we start to look at some of the other applications like the CNI or resilience microgrid, again, where there might be funding available, but a lot of that money is being provided by the private parties or the private businesses that are investing in those resources. So they know what their value of resilience is, and it maybe doesn't need, it's clearly working for them. As new money from the federal government rolling through some of the state agencies, it may be that this provides an opportunity for the federal government essentially to be a customer for the value of resilience. And again, it takes off the table, I think, some of the questions about what is the exact value for the ratepayer if you're reducing what the ratepayer burden is. So those are just a couple of thoughts and implications. On the solar and storage, there's clearly some other efforts or other areas within the bill around battery recycling or storage demonstrations where we think microgrids have an important role to play. The last thing that I will say before opening it up for questions, and again, happy to go into some of the specific sections. There's about 40 I think a couple of dozen anyway. But I do think that the time has come for microgrids, and my evidence for that is that John Oliver actually used the word microgrid in a takedown of the planning process around transmission that was sort of making the rounds at the last NARUC meeting. But if we're into late night television, then I think the time has really come. So Kira, I hope that provides a little bit of what we had spoken about in terms of, just trying to understand where some of the funding might be available, which really comes down to a lot of programs around resilience and, what that might mean in terms of the interface with you all here on the call.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. So we do have a few minutes for questions. If any members want to raise hands and unmute yourselves. I did get a question in the chat that I will put to you, Cameron. It was just a clarification on one of your earlier slides that included highways and transportation funding, and whether that was kind of directly related to microgrids. Are there kind of provisions in the bill that might support microgrids that would provide backup power to transportation electrification, charging infrastructure, or was that something else?
No, well, there are provisions in the bill, especially around fleet electrification, port electrification, and charging infrastructure broadly, where there are applications, especially for some of the things like DC fast charging applications, where a microgrid may be an important component of being able to manage that instantaneous demand. I will say that we have flagged sections across the bill that we think are the most relevant, but there's still quite a bit of room for interpretation of exactly what that means. And so if I switch over here, hopefully you're seeing now this Word document that I have mentioned before is,
We're still on the PowerPoint.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just try something here then.
All right. Yeah, now we're seeing the Word document.
Okay. So maybe just as a little bit of an example, and I can make this just a little bit larger here. For example, there are block grants for EV charging infrastructure. They don't call out microgrids specifically, but certainly there's an opportunity there for microgrids to be a part of the solution. We have also tried to rank these a little bit in terms of a high, medium, or low of where we think the relevance is directly to microgrids. So, congestion and air quality improvements, just as an example of the next one. I'm not sure other than maybe some of the charging infrastructure needs, as I mentioned before, it may not be clear exactly where microgrids fit into that one. But I guess in answer to your basic question, yes, there's quite a bit of funding that is focused on EV infrastructure, and a lot of that shows up through what I've broadly termed here the highways. Mm-hmm. And these relate to the titles within the bill.
Yeah, and another question in the chat, Cameron, I think you mentioned this, the document that you were showing us is still in kind of final review stages, but should be out pretty shortly, and I'm happy to share that with members of the state working group when that's ready.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, literally, like I say, we've sort of been pulling it together this week, and so just making a few little tweaks before. I wouldn't have had time to sort of walk through every piece of it here anyway. So hopefully it'll be something that we can share with you, and you all might be able to digest, and would be happy to talk more. I mean, I will say this is as much of a learning process for us as it is for everybody else. So, there's a lot of things that are unclear of exactly what the implementation will look like, what the schedule will look like, how competitive funding might be versus, allocated by formula and things like that. So, we, along with a lot of other people, are sort of trying to figure some of this stuff out. So, So we'd welcome your chance to engage in conversation more, especially in sort of specific instances.
Mm-hmm. And Kirsten has put in the chat some resources from NASEO on the infrastructure bill. NASEO prepared a briefing for NARUC members last week. They have a written summary kind of by topic of the entire bill text. So thanks, Kirsten, for putting those in. Hope folks will take a look at those as well. Are there any other questions for Cameron before we move into the next item on our agenda?
Well, I really, again, thank you for welcoming me into the call, and I will share this as soon as it's finalized, and look forward to talking more.
So yeah, thank you very much, Cameron. We really appreciate getting your update, and look forward to sharing that document with our membership once that's ready.
Great. And I hope everyone has a great holiday.
Thank you. You too. So we will move into the next item on our agenda now, and I will pass it over to Kirsten and bring my slides back up.
Thank you, Kira. Thank you, Cameron, for this great overview, and welcome everybody to our Microgrid State Working Group call. My name is Kirsten Rickless. I'm the Managing Director for Electricity and Energy Security at NASEO, for those of you who don't know me. And because we had quite a few new members, both from the NASEO and the NARUC membership, we thought that we wanted to kind of do a member roundtable as the next agenda item. So I will go by region. And for the new state working group members, we would like you to share why you joined the working group and any questions or challenges related to microgrids that you have faced in your state. And then for the existing state working group member updates, you're invited to share current or upcoming microgrid related regulatory proceedings or state energy office programs, or any kind of questions, concerns, etc. that you have and you might want to have us address in FY22 is also a great update from you all. So With that, I will randomly start with the Northeast. So any states from Maine down to, let's say, that's New York, looking at the NASEO region. And anywhere in between. If there are any new or existing members, please come on camera or unmute yourself to share any updates or make introductions. We'll give it a second for people to find their unmute button. I think we have New York on the line for sure. If New York wants to give an update.
This is Diane Berman from New York. I don't really have an update. I just, from my own sense, find this to be very important, looking at what people are doing. I think people still struggle with what exactly is a microgrid and how does it work that it actually can be feasible and cost effective. So I think for me, seeing some of the specific programs or pilot projects that may be being done gives me some interesting perspective to bring back to my state. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else from the Northeast? All right. Okay, Mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania on down to Virginia.
Hi, so my name is Chris Vandenberg. I work with the Pennsylvania Commission, Public Utility Commission. Don't have an update, just really getting my feet wet with microgrids. And I guess the one perspective I come to microgrids is from cybersecurity and the concerns around securing microgrids and the grid overall. Thanks.
Great, thank you. That's really interesting, and I don't think we've delved much into cybersecurity in the microgrids working group, but NASEO and NARUC also have a solar cybersecurity group or project where we touched on some of these things, but this might be a great item to consider for FY22. So thank you for that, appreciate it. Anybody else in the Mid-Atlantic region that wants to chime in?
Sure, this is Ken German with the Virginia Department of Energy. Likewise, Pennsylvania, I've got really nothing new to report. I'm new to this group, but like New York said, this is a critical issue. It's going to be coming fast. In Virginia, there's a huge push towards resiliency because of sea level rise, especially in the Hampton Roads area. So since I'm handling energy storage issues at the department, I'm taking on the microgrids too. And on a kind of a related side note, I'm working with James Madison University, and we're exploring the possibilities of doing a microgrid project on Tangier Island in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. And for those of you who don't know about Tangier, it's a shrinking community. There's about 450 people left. They're mostly all watermen who work the waters of the Chesapeake Bay, crabbing and all of that. And we did a renewable energy project some years ago, and they're very interested. They're fed from a single line that runs over to the eastern shore of Virginia. If that line goes down, they're dependent on two aging diesel generators, and we think it would be an ideal opportunity to demonstrate the possibilities of doing a microgrid to help that community be more self-sufficient in going forward.
Great, yes, thank you. We had an excellent presentation on Tangier Island during a resilience conference earlier this summer, so thank you for that, certainly interesting. I think I saw another unmute. Was that Kelly?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Kirsten. Kelly Bragg from West Virginia Energy Office, or Office of Energy. We're interested in microgrids after the NASEO family had a presentation from Kentucky on their microgrid study from SEPA.
Mhm.
And so we decided to use our SEP dollars to have them do one for us. So we're in the early planning stages of that and very excited about it. We also, just today, we're on a call where Iowa and Pennsylvania talked about their microgrid projects. And to the people on the call that want to learn about a really cool project, it's called Sun Crate. And it was the Iowa Office of Energy with the Iowa State University. And it's basically a shipping crate with power walls installed and a solar roof. And it's intended to be a mobile microgrid. So they put this project together after a derecho in 2020. West Virginia had one of those in, I think, 2014. So it was really interesting to hear from a state that is attempting to meet a challenge that we've also faced. And just thanks for the opportunity to be on the working group.
Great, thank you. Yes, certainly very interesting project. Anybody else from the Mid-Atlantic who wants to chime in? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the Southeast. Anybody from the Southeast region?
Hi, this is Rick Campano with South Carolina. I don't think we have any updates. We've been participating in this group mostly for our own edification, but there's no programs that we have at this time that I'm aware of.
Okay, great. Yeah. And is there any other, topics that you would like us to see cover in FY22 that would be helpful for any of the states, either if you have programs or if you don't have programs, do let us know. Anybody else in the Southeast? Do we have any of the territories on the line? Southeast or territories?
Hey, Kristen, this is Ross Hammonds from the Mississippi Public Service Commission.
Hi.
I'm also in my office is Davis Gates. I'm the general counsel for the commission. Davis is an attorney who works directly for one of our commissioners. This is our first meeting. No real updates. Just kind of joined because this is a topic that is getting some traction in the state. We have one of our utilities probably maybe 8 months ago filed and received a certificate to build a solar plus battery storage in a community that's on the end of a radial transmission line. They're, kind of conducting some study research on that facility for purposes of reliability and resilience. Not as much microgrid oriented, but certainly a lot of similarities. But just kind of joined to, hear what's going on this topic.
Yeah, great. Welcome. We're always happy to have new states, Virginia, Mississippi. It's great that you have joined us, but also new members. So appreciate you joining this call on the working group. Okay, so moving on from the Southeast and the territories to the Midwest. Anybody from the Midwest would like to chime in?
Yeah, hi, Kirsten. It's Megan Levy from Wisconsin here. We did one round of our critical infrastructure and microgrid and community resilience center feasibility studies. Those are almost all under contract. They'll all be done by June 30th, 2022. Wisconsin's interested in this is really twofold. It's the resilience and security that we've already heard about. And I second the kind of merging of some of our CATS work into this. And, as we track the new IEE 1547 or whatever the new cybersecurity rules are, I think that's a super important part of this microgrids in general. And, I'm just involved in tracking some work in my state because we have some outdated admin rules and regulations that currently make it difficult to actually implement a microgrid. It's not, you can do it, but there's some work going on to redo, particularly an admin rule called PSC 119 on interconnection, because there's currently some prohibitions on islanding that would be, different than what we're going for with microgrids, where we'd actually like islanding for resilience. Because again, similar to other comments that we made, we have very, very rural portions of our state where we really feel like microgrids could be a security solution. And the high winds that we experienced, while not nearly as bad as the tornadoes over the weekend, serve to to show us that. The places where we've got warming shelters right now are in the very, very remote regions of the north. So thanks again, really enjoying the working group and loving all the presentations.
Great, yeah, and congratulations on your program. It's certainly very exciting last year. Anybody else from the Midwest?
Hi, this is
Kristen.
Lisa.
Oh,
You guys go ahead.
All right, Iowa will go first, I guess. We'll go alphabetical. Shelley Peterson from Iowa. Just to follow up on West Virginia's comment on our microgrid crate. We did just have our second derecho event plus tornadoes. Those are not things common to Iowa, the derecho, but I guess it's kind of like these 100-year floods that are coming every couple of years as the new norm. We had 6% of the state without power. But part of the problem was it was just across the entire state. It wasn't like it was localized and easy to respond to. So I really appreciated that speaker earlier today to talk about funding. You know, we can definitely see the need for microgrids, whether they're mobile or permanent. And it'll be really nice to get hopefully get some funding to help.
great, yeah, and Iowa had an excellent series recently on some of the microgrid considerations. So maybe Kelsey or Kira, if you want to put the link in the chat for people to see if they want to listen to the webinars. Thank you, Shelley. Please.
Hi, Elise Trudeau from the state of Minnesota, and Minnesota and other states, Shelley is part of this as part of a state energy office, state energy program, technology acceleration group for on-site energy at critical facilities. And then we just have a number of other sort of complementary programs that look like we might want to consider microgrids for those programs, such as for wastewater treatment in schools. And so, and then just generally, I've been sort of on point for the department since 2013 when we first started, when we started our first studies on microgrids and energy storage. So figured it was just a matter of time. I'm really excited to hear what other states are working on. Megan, I really appreciated your presentation last Friday at the Sandia workshop, and just excited to learn more. Thanks.
Great. Yes, welcome to Minnesota, to the state working group. Glad to have you. Anybody else from the Midwest?
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Abby Brokaw from Illinois Office of Energy. We recently implemented some changes to our staffing, so we're kind of functioning now under specific topics. So mine is resiliency, and so I'm just trying to get a grasp of what other states are doing in this space, and especially with the funding about to come through, just try to get an idea of how we can activate that here in Illinois. So starting from the very beginning here in Illinois, so I'm excited to hear about what everyone else is doing in this space.
Great, welcome Abby. And yes, we're excited about this working group because we have states that have, far along and like old hats and hands at this, and then we also have states that are just beginning this journey. So it's really great. I think a really good kind of learning and exchange in this group. So always happy to have that. Anybody else from the Midwest?
This is Julie Kempf. I'm from the Indiana Office of Energy Development. I wasn't listed on the state working group members yet. I just texted Kristen that I'm interested in joining the group. So I appreciate being able to sit and listen. Here in Indiana, we, like probably a lot of states, we're getting some questions and interest in microgrids. So I'm here to listen and learn from everybody else, especially those who have implemented microgrids, so that we can explore this topic along with everybody else. Thank you.
Great, welcome Julie. Great, all right, moving on to the Central Region. Anybody from the Central Region? Okay, I don't hear anybody, don't see anybody unmuting themselves. So we'll go to the West region. Anybody from the West region?
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Jessica Teese here from the CPC, California Public Utilities Commission. As a quick update on upcoming microgrid related activities that we're having, earlier this year, the Commission approved a microgrid incentive program. As you may or may not be aware, but just as a quick recap, the program is intended to fund clean energy microgrids that support critical needs of vulnerable populations that are impacted by the grid outages. Another goal of the program is to test new technology and or regulatory approaches to help inform future action. It's $200 million, and these are for projects that are spanning across multiple property, multiple customers, in front of the meter microgrids. So they're more complex, not just solar and storage for single residential customers. So it's different than other pots of funding that we have. And then for scale, this $200 million we're envisioning will be funding about 15 to 20 projects. But that's kind of to give you an idea of how many projects we're going to fund. As far as where we are in the proceeding, so while the Commission has approved this funding and the program itself, this past summer, the program administrators, which is the local IOUs, had a series of workshops to gather input of what this project and all the details, eligibility criteria, et cetera, and what that would look like. And just recently on December 3rd, they had submitted a draft of that plan to us. So it will go through the proceeding processes of having comments, reply comments, but the anticipation of this program launch will be at the end of this year or early next year. So that's for the first part of this year as it relates to the incentive program. Other updates I have is that on the second latter part of this year, we're hoping to focus on the multiple property tariff. That's something that does not exist yet in the state of California. Earlier this year, I'm trying to get my years right. Earlier this year, we had a series of working group meetings, meeting with parties, educating ourselves, educating them of what would go into this tariff, if we should have one. What would the proposals look like? So we already had a lot of homework that we did building up to this. And where we'll enter our proceedings in the latter half of this year for proposals to be submitted for this multiple property tariff. So I'll pause there.
Great, thank you.
We have a lot of going on.
Yes, you always do. And we had both California and Hawaii on several webinars, but most recently on the tariffs. That was really interesting.
Yeah. I think those are the pieces that are most useful for this group, but just quickly throwing in there, we also had a recent decision on utility microgrids to help avert possible capacity shortfall and other things we're working on too. Happy to talk more about that maybe. If you're interested offline, feel free to contact me. But I think the incentive program and the multiple property tariff is something that can be applied and shared with all. That may be most useful.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Jessica. Anybody else from the West region, still Central region?
Hey, Kirsten, sorry, this is one more from the Midwest. I had some mic issues. Couldn't get on, but yeah, nice to meet everybody. My name is Chris Watkins. I'm a rates analyst with the Minnesota Department of Commerce. So, I'm here, I don't have an update, I'm new here. I'm just here to kind of observe and learn as we see that microgrids in Minnesota are going to be coming in front of our commission more often. We had one utility is already asking for certification of some projects, and there's rumors of more coming. So what we're trying to do is get a grasp on how we can best value all the services provided by microgrids, so we can accurately allocate the costs or apportion the benefits of such projects amongst our ratepayers, and then also find out in our integrated distribution planning efforts. What information do we need to tease out of the utilities and get on the record so we can, alleviate the informational asymmetry between utilities and third-party providers of certain services, so we can hopefully get a more efficient market going there. But yeah, very excited to learn. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, yes, thank you. Is there anybody who I missed who wants to chime in?
Hi, Kirsten. This is Darren Zigich from New Mexico. Just don't have a lot on the policy front, but I did want to mention that we do have our off-grid microgrid starting up at our Hyde Memorial State Park up the hill from Santa Fe. Hopefully next week we'll energize that thing and go live. That was put in due to the power line that ran up the mountain to that park at 9,000 feet was failed. It was an underground buried line. It was a private line put in over 40 years ago, and it finally gave way. And the cost estimates to relay that line under the Seoul Highway going up to the ski basin up at the top of the mountain was astronomical. So an off-grid microgrid was the cheapest way to go, and it was originally proposed and costed out under an ESCO project. So that was the way we were going to fund it, was through an energy savings performance contract, because you couldn't show savings from utility rates, but you didn't have a utility line anymore. So we were running a diesel generator up there, renting one, and you could easily show cost savings that way. Plus there was other energy savings in that project, but this is a winter peaking facility. So it's a very large microgrid for a small campus size state park. And it's in the middle of the forest up the hill from Santa Fe, and it's going live next week. And so we're very excited about that. Another piece of the funding, we abandoned the ESCO funding piece though, because our state parks can access these grants from the Department of Interior, and that is how they paid for this microgrid project, was through a grant through a non-DOE, non-traditional funding source. So that may be something for people to look at in the future if they have a similar situation.
Yeah, great. And what's the power source for the microgrid there?
Sorry, it's a 81 kilowatt solar array up at a ridge at 9,000 feet, and it feeds a battery building, lithium iron phosphate batteries, and then we have a backup propane generator.
Okay, great, thank you.
So,
yeah, congratulations on getting that live next week. Exciting.
Yeah.
Great. Anybody else that would like to chime in?
Hey, Kirsten.
Hi.
Antonio here from Utah Office of Energy. There's no...
Antonio, we're having a bit of trouble at hearing you.
Any regulatory that is around. Can you hear me?
Maybe turn off your camera. It's a little disjointed.
It's off now. Can you hear me?
Okay, try again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, sorry. Just was saying that Governor Cox on his Utah roadmap plan, he wants to identify the ways that Utah can establish our public-private partnerships on clean energy and exploring the options with microgrids. We have been doing a lot of work on the studies for transmission and energy markets here in Utah. So yeah, we're considering the microgrids options too. And yeah, we're happy to participate here.
Great, welcome. Thank you for chiming in. Final call, anybody I missed wants to chime in, say hi, a new member, an existing member.
Yes, good afternoon, Kirsten. Harry Beitelsbach, Pennsylvania Public Utilities Commission, Technical Utility Services. I am new to this roundtable, this meeting, member roundtable discussion. I'm basically learning about the microgrid development process and what it is all about. My initial impression is that we're actually going kind of backwards with this. I'm a longtime employee of various utilities and interconnection, about 40 years plus service. And when I started, we were still in the late days of connecting small, what would be microgrids nowadays, small utilities that were powered by a single source of generation and supplying small communities. And we were connecting them. They were joining utilities. The reason they were joining is because they were facing various issues with keeping their equipment in shape and operational, being reliable. Their power systems, their generators, whether it was a hydro generator or whatever, the maintenance was high and they were having difficulties. So they joined with larger utilities to get the reliability and to some extent, eventually the resiliency. Are we moving with microgrids? Are we going to be moving backwards? Are we going to create these islands of generation and communities or businesses which eventually will face the same conditions these early co-ops and individual utilities, small community utilities faced? So that's a question that keeps coming to mind here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting question. I certainly think it's worth considering. I think there's certainly a kind of resilience benefit of microgrids, and maybe it looks like we're going backwards, but it might just address other considerations and needs that we are now facing these days. But thanks, that's really interesting. So with that, I think, unless there's anybody else who wants to chime in, I just wanted to say we always appreciate any updates you want to send us our way of what is going on in your states, any questions. Kirsten, myself, Kira, and Kelsey, the three Ks, so to speak. We're always here for you and open to jumping on a call to talk things through. We had certainly separate calls with some of the members noodling over some of the questions that you're all facing. So if you have any questions or just want to share what is going on in your state, please don't hesitate to reach out and get in touch with either NASEO or NARUC or both. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kira to go a little bit over what we have planned for 2022.
Thanks, Kirsten. So with our final 10 minutes, we just want to go over some things that are in our pipeline for the state working group. So first, following the publication in January of 2021 of 2 briefing papers for the Microgrid State Working Group, we've been working on a new paper on valuing resilience for microgrids, challenges, innovative approaches, and state needs. We are very grateful to several members of the State Working Group for providing comments on previous drafts of this paper. We have submitted that to the Department of Energy this week, and we hope to publish that very soon. So that should be out, we think, in January. And just as kind of a very high level summary of some of the things that we look at, I wanted to share a table from that paper where we really summarize a number of tools and methods for valuing resilience that are either available now or will be available in the next couple of years. So the specific tools that we look at in this paper are the Interruption Cost Estimator 2.0 tool, which updates the ICE calculator, which is today's sort of standard for resilience valuation, although the first iteration of that tool does have several weaknesses and shortcomings that the second iteration is trying to address. We also look at the customer damage function calculator tool that's from the National Renewable Energy Lab, Sandia National Lab's social burden method, FEMA's benefit cost analysis tool, and an interesting kind of hybrid approach that uses both survey data and regional economic modeling to model the cost of an outage. This is called the Power Outage Economics Tool, or POET, and that's a partnership between Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and ComEd. They're looking at Chicago for the first iteration of that tool, but it could potentially be expanded to cover other regions. So we go into detail about all of these tools in the paper. Obviously, once that's out, we'll share it with members of the working group, and we can look for opportunities to have a future webinar or discussion on the conclusions here. So I will pass back to Kirsten for our next update.
Yes, so thank you, Kira. And I think the valuation tools in those papers are highly relevant, not just for microgrids, but for other considerations as well. So I invite you all to take a look when that paper is out. We're also writing a kind of a companion paper on renewable energy microgrids, so kind of trying to address the issue that, microgrids provide resilience benefits, but how can we also pair that with renewable energy and storage? This paper will go over some of the components of renewable energy microgrids, as well as policy and cost considerations and benefits of renewable sources for microgrids. This is also coming out in early 2022. We're a little behind NARUC's timetable. This is the NASEO paper, but we will most likely early next year send this to you all for review. So if you would like to review this paper, please let me or Kira know, and we'll make sure to send it to you. And then I'll just continue with the updates. As you're probably all aware, NASEO and NARUC have their winter conferences coming up. The NASEO Energy Policy Outlook Conference will be in February 8th to 11th in DC. And while we won't have so far a specific microgrid focused session, the conference will be all about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and how state energy offices and other state agencies can implement those provisions and what this all means. So stay tuned for an upcoming agenda that will be on NASEO's website. And that, I'll turn it over to Kira.
Thanks, Kirsten. Next on the list is the NARUC Winter Policy Summit, which is in DC on February 13th through 16th. We do have a session that is specifically dedicated to microgrids on Sunday, February 13th from 3:30 to 5. Our staff subcommittees on energy resources and the environment and our staff subcommittee on electric reliability and resilience are teaming up to do a session called In an Extreme Weather Event, Do You Know Where Your Microgrid Is? That looks specifically at how microgrids have functioned during extreme weather events to provide power during broader outages. So we're excited for that session and the rest of our summit. The next thing I wanted to announce is a virtual workshop for the Microgrid State Working Group. We are tentatively targeting March 29th through 30th, 2022. We will do that in the afternoon, something like 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll send out more information on that soon. And the purpose of the virtual workshop will be to kind of get input from state members that will eventually go into a regulatory and policy roadmap for microgrids that we'll be working on throughout 2022, that will take kind of some of the lessons that we've learned through this working group and look in particular at efforts at public utility commissions and at state energy offices to address regulatory and policy challenges to microgrid development in states. So we're excited for that. And the last thing I'll mention on the list is that we will continue to be holding educational webinars through the Microgrid State Working Group. So I think some of the input that we heard today from the state updates was very valuable in helping us think of topics and speakers that we could bring in that would be valuable to you all in your roles with your states. Of course, if you have any specific ideas for us or suggestions, no matter how vague, please do feel free to share those with us. It's very helpful as we look to continue making progress through this working group. So Kirsten, I think we've covered everything. Anything else to add before we conclude?
Yeah, no, nothing to add except that I wanted to reintroduce my colleague Kelsey Jones at NASEO. She joined NASEO over the summer, and I will still, of course, be here for you all and be part of the NASEO team, but she will be the main point of contact for NASEO for the Microgrid State Working Group going forward. So I wanted to make sure that you have met her, even if it's just virtually. And it's been really exciting to work with all of you, and I'm excited to see what the working group is going to continue to accomplish over the next year.
Thanks, Kirsten. So with that, I will just thank again the Department of Energy for supporting this working group. Thanks to my co-facilitators at NASEO, Kirsten and Kelsey. And thanks to all of you for your support and your engagement. We look forward to a successful 2022. Excited to put out our publications, hopefully see you all for a workshop in March, and continue holding webinars and working group meetings.
Great. Thank you all, and happy holidays. And thank you, Kira. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Abby.